Time is 7 p.m.
Mr. Davis,
Mark, would you like to lead us in prayer?
Sure would. Thank you. Thank you, Lord, for bringing us together tonight to help us lead our community in the future.
All right, then. Everybody's here.
Thank you for this honor. Help us to listen first, to understand. Help us to make decisions that you approve. And thank you for helping our community through this pandemic. Help us lead as you see fit, as we try to get back to a world that you would like us to live in. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mark. At this time, as you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic,
which stands
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice
for all.
All right, thank you all. All right, this time, Ben, would you please call the roll?
Present.
Here.
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 Here. All right, thank you, sir. And for your consideration, I need a motion and a second to approve as presented. The minutes from May 18th, 2020, Committee of the Whole. And minutes May 18th, 2020, Special Council.
So moved, Warren.
Member Fonte.
Second,
Warren.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, at this time, we have recognition of visitors. We have 3 speakers. Just a quick reminder before I turn it over to Ben. The time limit is 5 minutes. He will give me a cue at 30 seconds off screen. I'll let you know if you're getting close, and let's move on from there. So, Ben, take it over.
Hello, Ben. I'm ready. Brad Davis, 1678 Meadow Lane Drive, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I have a couple items I'd like to bring to the attention of council. First is on section 5A of Ordinance 19-2020. I can understand where council's trying to influence commercial and industrial businesses to purchase property within the city. My position, there's no incentive for the builder of a single family home that wants to purchase property in order to receive the tax break. When the document was in committee, there was a provision for demolition which would reduce the $250,000. That was struck down by Mr. Revolt and agreed by the rest of council. So the way I read section 5A, council is throwing a bone with no meat attached to someone that would like to build on a parcel with an older home. The real mission of this ordinance is C and D. There are people out there who would like to take advantage of the proposed CRA, but council has made it so restrictive that it's out of the picture. If you made it $225,000 plus the demo with including the demolition cost, that might put a little meat on the bone. Item number 2, green waste. We have a beautiful city, has been noted many times by this city council. Where are the residents supposed to get rid of green waste, tree limbs, leaves, grass clippings, shrubs, etc.? I know Kimball will take them if you bag them. Some of these properties around here are over an acre, many truckloads instead of bags. The mayor has personally tried to get involved, and he checked with the community, the near around communities, and Plain Township says absolutely no. Well, that was before we bought property. So now we have property with large parking lots. So summer's here, and there needs to be a location where we can keep this city looking good. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had myself muted. Mr. Osborne, you're up next.
Okay, I am here.
You may
Chuck
begin when
Osborne, Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I am addressing the second reading of ordinance number 19, 2020, which proposes to resurrect the city's CRA program. North Canton's on again, off again CRA program over the years has provided nothing more than corporate charity for local multimillionaire developers. Any thoughts of resurrecting a CRA program would certainly be a failure for our North Canton City Schools, as the program gives away property tax money desperately needed to fund the North Canton City School District and siphons tax dollars away from the North Canton City Library, the city's 4 levies, which are the street levy, the EMS levy, storm sewer levy, and fire levy. As we all know, funding the city's levies through property taxes has allowed the city to maintain its artificially low income tax rate. In 2016, when there was legislation to restart a CRA program, North Canton City School Superintendent Jeff Windorf spoke in opposition to the proposed CRA program, as did numerous city residents. Mr. Windorf also left a letter addressed to then Mayor David Held and City Council. At a September 26, 2016 council meeting, following overwhelming opposition to restarting the CRA, it was announced that the legislation would be tabled where it has remained. Why, under our newly elected mayor, Stephen Wilder, is there a desire to restart a program which diverts tax dollars from our city schools, our city library, and 4 city levies? A May 20th, 2020 repository story reports that Ohio's Department of Education has a budget shortfall and that the North Canton City School District will be receiving $896,000 less in state funding this year. Additional cuts for 2021 will result in a $1.6 million reduction in state funding for next year. The city school district can also expect a 40% reduction in casino money. The Louisville City Schools are dealing with extreme financial shortfalls. In a May 29, 2020 news story in the repository, it is reported that they are cutting 32 employees, including 9 teachers. Do both the council and North Canton's newly elected mayor want to divert school dollars away from our city schools, given the financial hits they are taking, and see similar employee cuts in the headlines for North Canton City Schools? Mayor Wilder, was this one of the planks in your platform for North Canton mayor when you were on the ballot last November? It appears former Mayor Held listened to the overwhelming opposition 4 years ago and shelved any plans for a CRA corporate charity program. Are you listening now? North Canton is no longer home to a Fortune 500 company, but it is home to a top-ranked school system. Hopefully, you want our city schools to remain strong academically as well as financially. Restarting the CRA program only adds to the financial hits the school district is facing. As former Mayor David Held led on this issue 4 years ago to the benefit of our city schools, surely you, Mayor Wilder, can do the same and put an end to this CRA legislation. On another issue, I want to briefly just talk about the proposed amphitheater in Bitzer Park. Desires for an amphitheater would pan out much, much better if the amphitheater was put in either Price Park or Dogwood Park. I just do not understand why you continue to try and load up poor little Bitzer Park. It's not even much more of a park anymore. So we do not need to be adding an amphitheater to the already oversized memorial in Bitzer Park. I will have more to say on this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
Thanks, Chuck.
Mr. Bluba, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
When you're ready.
Okay. Good evening. This is Joseph Blueball, 256 Glenwood Street, Southwest, North Canton, Ohio. I'm here to talk about two proposed ordinances, 31-2020, the Bitzer Park improvements, and if I have time, 19-2020, the CRA. And hopefully I'll be able to tie those two together. First of all, the Bitzer Park improvements. The idea of building an outdoor bandstand in Bitzer Park is a good idea, but must be done correctly. This should not be declared an emergency. We need to analyze this thoroughly. There's no reason to rush. My concern is that there's no consideration for the existing trees in the park. The design should be done with a priority of utilizing as many existing trees as possible. Looking at the detailed design, there's currently 33 large trees and 12 small ones in the park. And the plan is to destroy all of those trees except 7 of the large ones. And 5 of those 7 are actually right up against the Y parking lot, and I think they're actually on Y property. So only 2 large trees in the entire Bitzer Park would survive the plan the way it is. And of that, only 1 of those large trees are currently where the building would be, where the bandstand building would be. So theoretically, you could build that bandstand and only remove 1 large tree instead of the 26 large trees that are planning to be removed. Also, there's no specification of how many and how large any new trees that will be planted, even though last week in the council meeting was mentioned that new trees will be planted, but I don't see that in the plan. But even if there are some small trees planted, it would look like a lot like the current City Hall Plaza, which to me looks barren. It's just a bunch of concrete and a bunch of small trees. I don't think anyone really wants to sit on the benches there because the trees don't provide any shade. I really hate if Bitzer Park just becomes a larger version of the City Hall Plaza. Last week was mentioned that some old trees that are past their useful life will be removed and new ones planted for the enjoyment of future generations. But has an analysis been made of which trees are really past their useful life? Maybe the ones there would still live for 50 more years and are already beautiful and providing shade. A few new ones will take many years to be beautiful and provide any shade. It was also mentioned that community groups were consulted about the plan, but it looks like all the groups consulted were just groups that plan to use the amphitheater, not citizen groups that might be concerned about the actual look of the park. Finally, I want to mention that the State of Ohio Department of Natural Resources has a program in urban forestry, and there's an urban forester that's assigned who has an area of the state that includes Stark County, and her whole job is to give communities advice about trees free of charge. Her name is Lola Lewis, and I request the city ask her to review the current plan and make suggestions of how they could be modified to achieve the goal of an outdoor bandstand while prioritizing utilizing as many existing trees as possible. I've talked to her, and she knows and has worked with Brian Hill in the past on previous projects. This would make the project much less expensive, avoiding the cost of removing large trees and planting new ones, and it would make the finished product much more enjoyable. Concerning the CRA ordinance, wrote an email to the city council, so I won't reiterate everything I put in the email, but the 3 main points are that it needs to be better analyzed if we're going to do it at all. It seems to be just a tax break to a few wealthy individuals that would benefit from it at the expense of all the citizens of the city. There's one inconsistency in the report I saw. It talks about in the population section that the city needs to increase housing values to attract younger residents. But that doesn't make sense because younger residents typically have less money until they get older in their careers. But then in the value owner occupied section, it mentions that the number of entry-level housing units valued under 100,000 is significantly less than in Stark County, which puts the city at a disadvantage of attracting younger residents. That statement I do agree with, but it's an opposition to the statement about the younger residents in the population section. So in general, all the analysis of the CRA, the way I read it, North Canton is pretty similar to Stark County and Ohio in the age of our houses and in the age of our population. What distinguishes us is we have a much wealthier median income than Ohio or Stark County. So once again, why do we need to come up with tax break schemes? And then finally, my suggestion is if we want to attract more residents, we should make downtown more enjoyable to the residents. It should be more bike friendly and pedestrian friendly and nature friendly, which brings me back to the Bitzer Park issue. If we make Bitzer Park more nature friendly and make downtown more bike friendly and more pedestrian friendly, we'll get those residents that we need without any CRA schemes. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
That's everyone for public speaks, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Ben. Okay, next up, we have the presentation on the proposed CRA legislation. Vice President Revolt will be leading that. Darrell, floor is yours.
Mr. Peters, can you hear me?
Can you guys remove me and Stroya, please?
Oh, yes. Let the record reflect members Stroya and Fonte will be abstaining from this discussion or presentation.
And the subsequent vote.
Yeah.
All right. As we all know, CRAs have basically two components. The first is the commercial and industrial development. And then a second component is the residential. And I'd like to focus on the residential tonight because that's where a great deal of the discussion has come regarding its deployment. As we all know, the Ohio Revised Code allows municipalities to abate 100% of the added value on a property up to 12 years on the residential side. Our ordinance, by contrast, contains provisions for residential abatement, but it's contingent upon meeting two criteria. The first is the home has to be torn down and replaced with a structure that has a value of $250,000 or more. I hope those who spoke at the council meeting tonight listen to what I'm going to say next very, very carefully. We have a housing challenge in this city. 55% of the houses predate 1969. Overall valuations of real property in the city of North Canton, in the school district, is stagnant. It grew over the last decade by just 2.6%. That is a terrible investment. For those who want to support the schools, they must understand that it becomes ever more difficult for the school to meet its operating and its capital costs when the tax base, the valuation does not grow. The fact of the matter is, in a little snapshot study that I did looking at 12 properties randomly selected in town, 25% of that housing stock declined over the last decade in value. Land values in some instances are now climbing to reach 40% of the tax value. The land is getting to be worth more than the house. And that should concern all of us for what that means in terms of our community. If we can, Ben, let's move to the slides. But before we do, I want to say one thing that I heard tonight, and I want to change our focus just a little bit. We hear that this is a takeaway. This is a takeaway. I want people, and we're going to present some information tonight that suggests it's exactly the opposite. That a good residential CR program, in fact, can be a very handsome investment for our community. I'd like to shift the conversation from what you heard tonight in the public speaks, which is what I call policy theory, to let's talk about policy fact, if we can. All right, Ben, let's go. All right, here are our goals on this CRA. The first is we want to create a healthy housing stock that encourages replacement of aging and dilapidated structures. We want to grow the city's future. And importantly, we recognize the contribution that a healthy valuation contributes to our school system. It is absolutely essential. But as I said, in the last decade, using the auditor's own numbers, that valuation has not grown significantly in the last decade. I might insert parenthetically, it's why the school's recent capital project has a 36-year run. That's astonishing, but it speaks to the issue at hand. We want to improve property valuation in the homeowner's favor. We want to raise property values. We want to increase resale values. And higher valuations ultimately equal lower millage rates. Next slide, Ben. Okay, so what we did was I had Ben and the team look at 4 properties from around North Canton, really one from each ward. Each of these properties met the criteria that would make it a target candidate for a CRA abatement. And what we did was we compared the current assessed values with the theoretical post-abatement tax values. So we used real numbers at the front end and looked at them at the back end. Next slide, Ben. Okay, just real quick, here are 4 properties that we used. We didn't identify as any property. But what I want to call your attention to is the relationship between the land values and the structural values. Notice the green column. A healthy area has about a 22 to 28% land value in the tax bill. But you can see right here, these are running between 32 and 44%. That is unhealthy in our local economy. Go ahead, Ben. Okay, so here we've got one property. We took this up in Ward 1. No, it is not Doug Foltz's house, but it's located on Hillcrest. Note that the land value is $35,500. The structural value on the thing is $47,200. So the total value, assessed value, is $79,700. And this is really important. The annual tax rate is a modest $1,600. And if we were to abate that, in other words, when you demolish something, the value of the land remains, the value of the structure goes away. Note here that that land is valued at 41% of the overall assessed value. Again, that should concern everyone in this town. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's how it works. You'll see on the left, there's no abatement. So we're going to start with $1,600. Over the first 12 years, that $1,600 translates into basically $24,000. And then in years 13 through 36, it climbs to $77,000. If we abated this, the school continues to get, and the other taxpayers, including the city, receive $658 a year. And over 12 years, it reflects a gain of $9,235. In year 13, however, the structure comes onto the tax rolls. And as you'll notice in the footnote to the lower left, we've slightly adjusted this 2.8% to consider growth. That figure grows to $8,900. Now compare that starting annual on the far left to the starting annual on the right. Compare the column that says over next 24 years, 77,000 to 294,000. Which of these scenarios helps our school system the most? If I was investing money, I can tell you this, I would not choose the column on the left. I'd be more than happy to defer gratification till year 13. Look carefully at this. What we're telling people, and I've told this to anyone who will listen, is that the foregone revenue is recovered in the first 36 months once the property comes back on the tax rolls. You're whole in 36 months. And the net out is 77,000 versus $294,731. Pretty good investment. Ben, next slide. Okay, so what do we got? The total investment is basically the deferred money. It's about 14 grand. But the total gained is 203. Look at the return on that in column 3. We talk about this as some sort of permanent loss. The fact of the matter is it's a fairly handsome investment. Imagine for a second if we could get a number of investors to engage in this demolition project, where we would be. Ben? I think these numbers, and we've got a whole series of other slides that we didn't include tonight for the interest of conversation. But the numbers don't lie. You can plug in some variables. In this case, Ben has added a small amount of growth, calculated a small amount of growth. But even if the number is static, the investment is still very, very, very attractive. What I heard tonight, and I'm going to be direct with Mr. Osborne, Mr. Bluebaugh, I find no acknowledgement that either the school or the city has a problem. None. Moreover, I don't find any solution in your comments. The numbers tell us, the valuations by the county auditor and in the housing study explain that we have a challenge. And as I've told people before, we're headed to a place as a first-ring suburban community that we may not want to go unless we can figure out a way to get a handle on this. This is an experiment. We know that the previous CRA was not particularly successful on the residential side. Will this help us? Perhaps it might. It will require the community. It will require the council. It will require the administration to monitor this and amend it as circumstances require. I've been around this town for 50 years. This is not the town I moved to 50 years ago. I've used this period of quarantine to walk the city streets. And I can tell you that what I see scares the hell out of me. And we have two options. We can take no action and leave these declining properties in place, do nothing. And those values, those declining values will place a greater and greater strain on our school system. Or we can utilize an investment strategy that produces a significant return and pumps value, real value, long-term into the city and the tax base and the school. All right, Mr. Peters, that concludes my remarks.
All right,
This is
thank
what
you,
we're voting
Darrell.
for.
I appreciate it.
Entertain
and
any
this-
questions if any council has any.
Yep,
Pat,
so-
do you need to add anything, or the mayor?
Hey, Darrell, I have a question,
Yes.
or even a comment. So thank you. Those slides were great. And I think for so many years, we have been talking about how nothing on nothing is nothing, and how these slides just showed the difference. And we have so many models in front of us where it has worked throughout the whole state. So one question I have, though, is there anything that we could do that would be put in place for some of that demolition? I think Brad and Mr. Osborne bring up, good points about that.
They do.
And
They do.
that's something that is a concern. Like, how do you build a $250,000 house, but then demolition is X amount? Does that make sense? And I don't know.
Stephanie, the answer to your question is yes, we should. And Pat and I and Ben and Jeff have had some conversations about creating a small demolition fund. I do not expect that we are going to be overwhelmed with projects.
I don't either.
But we could create a fund. And matter of fact, I talked to Alex Zumbar today. Alex has some money that can help us match on the demo side.
Wow.
So I think we've got some ways to help on the incentive end to get this down.
Well, and Mr. Osborne, and I will give him credit, and I think he's mentioned this idea before about a $5 per house, and he was kind of looking at what the Muskingum watershed has done and how they've been able to fund so many projects. And we know that they have so much money where they actually, I think last year or a couple of years ago, we all got $12 back. But is it something as simple as that where you could have an assessment like that starts to kind of develop into this almost reserve account for those means?
Well, Stephanie, it would probably be some sort of tax or some sort of fee, and I would leave that to the council if it wants to go that route.
Yeah.
We can't. Clearly, again, I think we're going to have a little bit of help on the demo side. We know that a demo's worth somewhere between 15 and 20 grand. So could we help? The answer is yes.
Okay.
And that would be an additional incentive to come in and knock some of these houses down.
Right. Right.
Well,
the explanation was great.
We hear people say this doesn't work, but the reality is it can work.
Yeah.
I see on the commercial side, Worcester, Dublin, Columbus, all
Hudson.
using the CRA on the commercial side for mixed use projects that have brought hundreds of millions of dollars into the community.
Yeah.
I've seen in other communities where perfectly viable homes get torn down and replaced by homes 3 times their value. So I'm not pessimistic. I'm willing to try it. And I'm willing to help, to your point.
Well, and Darrell, I think it says a lot that 4 years ago, you were hesitant. And that kind of you relooking and you kind of thinking, hey, maybe there is a way this could work. I think that says a lot. So
yeah, I just, I come back to this. We need to move this discussion at the end of the day to real numbers. And yes, there's a philosophic component to it. Do I support it or don't I? I get that. But when you look at Ben, bounce back to the earlier slide if you can, with the one property up in Ward 1. When you, would you do one more, please? Go down one more. Shows the abatement values. I'm sorry, before. There we go. I mean, I look at that, an extra $294,000. I say, what is it here? You know, we can do nothing, but you're going to have
Yeah.
$77,000. That's it.
Hey, Darrell, it's
Yeah.
it's Doug Foltz.
No, Doug, this is not your house. I just want to
No,
reassure you.
listen, I already built a family room on, so I'm not eligible. But I think when I'm looking at these numbers, we have to show this in a way that if you pick a property out, now you don't want to pick somebody's house out, but if you pick an R50 lot somewhere in the city that you spend say $120,000 on the house, and the lot's worth so much, then you're going to have to tear it down, and as you indicated, it's going to be around 15 grand. Then you're going to put up a $250,000 structure, so you're going to have to get loans for all that, including whatever your mortgage is on the $120,000 house you purchased. So I think we need to break this down in a way that shows people, why this makes sense for you to do this. And not so much one house in a neighborhood, but how you have to uplift maybe an entire street to make sense. Because you can't, the starting point I understand is to pick and choose whoever wants to do it, whoever's responsive to this, these options. But the real win is if somebody does their house this way, that some of the other neighbors buy into this too.
Yeah.
To make
Doug,
it all work, or a certain neighborhood. You know what I'm after? It's not just piecemeal through
Doug,
the city.
We've got a slide that does exactly that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, I don't know, do you have access to that slide right now?
And I think it's worth going through.
I mean, we took a whole block and did it.
So we understand. So people really understand what the the availability, that what the win is to do this.
Yeah, and the other thing, Doug, is that Pat's going to come back to us with some changes in the zoning ordinance as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm hoping we'll do is we'll look at how we zone our 50s, and we address setbacks, etc. So you can stick a little bit larger house maybe on the property.
Okay.
So to your point is, we can't. There we go. He's going to show you slide number 2 here on this deck. While we're talking here, we're waiting Ben to tee this up. Ben's done a huge amount of work on this. So's Mark, Soretta, Pat. There we go.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so there's original block. We got 12 R50s. We've consolidated them down to 6 properties. There you go.
Okay.
Now, we didn't run the numbers on it, but we thought it was too much. But it gives us an idea of, to your point, is where we're headed with this.
Hey, Darrell.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Darrell, I have a question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Ben, if you could go back to slide number 5.
On the
original. Yeah. On the deck that we just went through, slide 5. Yes. Nope. Yeah, that one right there. All right, Darrell, worst case scenario. Say the school board and Superintendent Wendorf comes back after reviewing this presentation and says, I see what you put here. We understand it. However, we want to be made whole from year 1.
Okay.
What would be your suggestion?
Here's what I would recommend we do. I'll buy them out. Here's 1 through 12. I'll buy them out. But I get the difference. So they get $1,600 for the next 36 years or whatever the valuation is. But any growth in that amount, I get it. That's the result of a property investment. The city gets it. I don't think they can have it both ways. They can't oppose it, and they can't expect to have to enjoy the benefits of the investment.
Okay, that would be fair.
I would just be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
There
Well,
are several ways we can do that. We can do that, what Darrell said, we can take the average of the last 10 years and give that to them. Or we can just split it right down the middle for 32 years or 36 years. But either way, they're going to get a lot more later than they would if nothing was done.
Yeah, I don't. Here's the point: is this? You can't. Nobody's going to get something without any. If we're going to write a check, we're going to derive the benefit from that check writing.
Yeah. I think that's fair, and that's the one. That's the continual theme I keep hearing.
Now let me just add one other philosophic point. Is this all right? And many of you heard me say this privately. All right. All of us are elected to serve the city of North Canton and its residents. You have a board, which 2 members don't even live in the city, nor does the superintendent. What authority should we grant them over our future? I'll leave that question for you all to ponder.
Why, thank you, Darrell.
With that in mind, Darrell, there is a tax incentive review council of all this, and they do have a Board of Education member on that. So as this whole Bateman thing goes through, there is a.
Here's the other thing is this. Let's look at the real numbers here. All right. And again, I want to come back to this. We're asking these guys to surrender $1,000. What does the community get by having a new $250,000 house? By contrast to a house is collapsing in value. I don't want to get into a large sociological urban planning conversation. But I can tell you this, if our housing stock isn't sound and isn't good, it takes us to places we don't want to go as a community.
Yeah. Well, Darrell, tonight is the second reading of 19-20. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, can we, to Brad Davis's point, can we tighten up the language in there that gives them some leeway in demolition cost?
I'll tell you what you can do. I'll tell you what you can do. We ought to do right now, because I don't think we're going to have any takers. But I would support a piece of legislation right now that creates a line item that has a small amount of money in it for demolition. Put $25,000 in right now.
Do we know what the average cost is to demo a house?
It's about 15.
And that's
15 is close.
With all the stuff you would take out and get paid back in scrap, copper, and all that.
Demolition costs are about $15,000.
Okay.
So if you want to create a line item and appropriate $50,000, I'm sure that would more than cover it for a while.
Okay.
A long while.
Well, Darrell, you could do that and say we'd pay half and see how that goes. At least it's
absolutely. I mean, we can set up the fund and create.
We'll match you. We'll pay $7,500. The owner pays $75,000. And see if we got any takers.
And remember, Alex is willing. Alex has got money too. Zumbar's got money.
That's true. Yeah. We can roll that
in. But we can create a line item to do it, and that's what I would do.
A couple of things, Darrell. I think it's the incentive. It's wanting to be here, wanting to make something happen for your community. These are all good points. So, but because they're, we have to look towards the future here. We really do. I appreciate your work on this.
Yeah, I'm going to give Darrell a lot of kudos on this also. He put a lot of work into this, and this may never be used, but we have it available. If a developer wants to take an investment in our neighborhoods, this is here for him.
Here's the thing that I keep coming back to me, and I sound like a broken record on this. We're not carving things in stone tablets here.
Mm-hmm.
We are experimenting. We see a problem. We have identified a potential solution. We want to try it. If it doesn't work, we're going to have to go to plan B, whatever that is. But I come back to where this conversation started during the public speaks. Do nothing, and there are very, very real consequences that take this community to very unhappy places.
Darrell? Okay. Was there somebody else there?
Mayor Wilder.
Oh, yes, Mayor.
Just a comment. I appreciate the dialogue tonight from our visitors and appreciate the dialogue from council and the leadership that Darrell has given to this project. Brought up good points tonight. Again, a zoning analysis, a demolition funding, but also we need something else in our toolbox. And I think this was just one way that helps us in transforming our community and also bringing a community development, just not economic vitality or development, but it's a community development. And I think we're approaching a transformation phase for our city for the future. And I know we'll have dialogue with our school system, and just please remember that one of my points of coming into office was to improve our working relationship with our educational communities. And I believe I was very strong in my support of the school levy this year, which I'm very thankful for the voters to help our schools advance. I'm just looking at a CRA as something else that we have in our toolbox that we can use, hopefully, for the greater good. I think as Mark or somebody else just said, we may not use it for a year or two, but it has something available for us. And I just think it's just something else that we have that makes us more, and I don't know what the word is, more
enticing.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Mayor, this is Darrell again. If you go down to Dublin right now on the east side of the Olentangy River, Dublin is experiencing an absolutely phenomenal multi-million dollar investment that has been put into place in part through a CRA. If we could get 20% of that in this community, it would be a game changer for the city of North Canton and a game changer for the school system. You know, one of the things when we pass these ordinances, there's nothing that we can do as we write into the ordinance. And that is, we can't instill it within it wisdom. It's got to be deployed wisely and not frivolously. And I think that's part of the challenge before us, is that when you put this stuff in place, you don't want to do stupid things with it. But people have to recognize that the city competes for capital. Now I'm talking about the commercial side now. We compete for investment. And to pretend that we will do nothing is to really limit our future.
Well, I would agree with that.
And, you know, it's just the way it is. And we can rant and we can rave about this or that, but the reality is, if you want big projects or you want projects that add lasting value, this is a path you've got to go down, but you need to use it very, very, very wisely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Darrell. Anyone else have a question, comment? Okay, seeing none, let the record reflect. We're going to keep Stroya and Fonte out for this next piece of legislation. We'll bring them back for 2720. Okay, this time. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion. We adopt the second reading of ordinance 19-2020.
Well, we probably should read it first.
Excuse me, motion to read it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Senior moment. Motion to read.
Sorretto, second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Tim? Did we lose
Maybe.
Tim? Hold
I'll
on.
read it if you want.
Hold on. Tim's on. Tim, you're
There we
on.
go.
Yep,
And
gotcha.
I have it. There we go. An ordinance implementing sections 3735.65 through 3735.70 of the Ohio Revised Code, establishing and describing the boundaries of a community reinvestment area in the city of North Canton, designating a housing officer to administer the program, creating a community reinvestment area housing council, and a tax incentive review council.
All right, Darrell?
Okay, I think we've discussed this. We've beaten this to dead. I do want to advise council that we may have a minor technical amendment that is going to be coming as a result of a conversation with the Ohio Department of Administrative Services. I'll have that language and activity for us at our third and final vote.
Sounds good. All right, is there a motion and a second to adopt the second reading?
Motion to approve. Second, Foltz.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries 5-0. All right, Ben, at this time, can you bring member Stroya and Fonte back into the fold?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, could you tell me who made the motion, please? Thank you.
Darrell.
Darrell moved to adopt.
Foltz seconded, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we've got Dominic and Matt.
I'm here. This is Stroya.
I'm here
All
too,
right.
Dom.
All right, gentlemen, welcome back. All right, moving on. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only ordinance 27-20?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 111 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton, specifically Section 111.12, Salaries and Bonds, in order to establish amounts for public officials' surety bonds.
All right.
Hey, this is Revolt. I have a question. Is this the appropriate committee for this?
Yeah, no, I just realized this is personnel and safety.
That is correct.
There is
Yeah.
a minor typo. It should be personnel and safety.
Okay,
All
let
right.
the record reflect that. And yeah, we discussed this a couple weeks ago. Gina and Patrick gave us their thoughts on this. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, entertain a motion and a second to adopt the second reading ordinance 27-20.
Revolt moves.
Second, Stroya.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Moving on, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only ordinance 23-20?
Revolt moves.
Waren second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 1133, Single Family and Two Family Residential Districts of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton, specifically Section 1133.08E, Fences and Walls, as described below.
All right, thank you. Chairman Revolt.
Yeah, as we discussed at the public hearing, this is a more comprehensive rewrite of the section of the zoning ordinance that deals with fences and walls. Marty did a huge lift addressing a broad range of issues and provided some regulation, frankly, where we didn't have any. So we had the public hearing. We've heard no comments either for or against. And if there aren't any questions, I'd move we adopt the third reading of ordinance 23-2020.
Second, Soretta.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only ordinance 29-20?
So moved, Waren.
Second, Stroya.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton through the Board of Control to enter into an agreement for the purchase of the real property located at 1136 North Main Street in the city of North Canton, Stark County, Ohio, permanent parcel number 10002312 at a cost not to exceed $230,000 and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thank you. Chairman Colt?
This is one of 4 purchases of real estate that will be land banked for the eventual site or the proposed site for our safety building. Are there any other questions?
No, sir.
If none, then I move we adopt the first reading of ordinance 29-2020.
Is there a second?
Second, Foltz.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings?
So moved,
Revolt
Waring.
moves. Revolt seconds.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules.
So moved, Waring.
Second,
Revolt
Stroya.
seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only, ordinance 30-20?
So
So
moved,
moved,
Waring.
Stroya.
Waring.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the appropriation of funds of the city of North Canton appropriated from the unappropriated resources of the general fund for current expenses during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020.
Thank you. Chairwoman Waring.
We had a good discussion last week and discussed what these funds were for, from the golf course to income tax for professional services, the farmer's market, Main Street carryover with the flags, and then some different retirements. And that allotted to about $321,000. If there are any other questions, Gina, can you answer?
This is Patrick, and I was just inquiring about do we need to amend this? I had talked with.
Did put something.
Yeah, there were some additional expenses that have arisen as a result of some mechanical failures of equipment at Arrowhead.
Right.
And Brian Hill's been on this and making sure things are being handled, but in the event that these other things need to be addressed before the summer hits, I thought that if since this was already up there, if the council would not object to increasing the appropriate line item that Gina would direct by an additional $45,000 to affect these mechanical repairs.
And Gina, you had mentioned that, so I apologize for not including that.
Yes, that actually has been included in the actual ordinance 30. I know we're not seeing it here, but it should be in your packet. We did amend that to include the 45,000. So the total for the general fund for the golf course is 76,100.
Okay.
I just wanted to put that out there to make it more transparent.
Okay, what would the final tally be then on that, Steph?
It's 321.20. She had already put it in with the golf course at 76.1.
Got it. Okay. All right, so let me ask, do I need Darrell, should I motion to amend this to include that?
Yes, we're going to need a motion for an amendment.
Under Robert's Rules of Order, we don't need a motion to amend. You haven't adopted a reading yet, so there is no official text until you adopt that first reading.
All right.
You will need a motion to amend after you would read it.
Yeah, we did just read it.
For a point of clarity, in the description that's on the screen right now, it says appropriated from unappropriated resources of the general fund, but these are also actually multiple funds. It's not all coming from the general fund. I just don't know if we can you strike the general fund description in that? Do you see where I'm seeing that on the screen?
Yeah, I am seeing that. Yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Let me, yeah, if they're coming from multiple funds, we need to strike that. So may I have a motion a second to strike general fund from the title of this ordinance?
So
Revolt
moved.
moves.
Second, Warren.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right,
Abstain,
motion carries.
Soretta.
Soretta abstains.
Mhm.
Passes 6-0. All right, so that cleans that up, and I guess we'll go with
You gonna adopt it as amended?
yeah, adopt it. Yep, adopt. May I have a motion a second to adopt ordinance 30-20 as amended, first reading?
So moved, Warren.
Revolt seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain, Soretta.
Soretta abstains. Motion passes 6-0. All right. And I kind of lost myself. We're good there, Ben? Moving on to 31-20?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only ordinance 31-20?
So move, Foltz.
Second, Warren.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the Director of Administration of the City of North Canton to advertise and receive bids according to the specifications now on file in the Director's office, and authorizing the Mayor upon Board of Control approval to enter into a contract for the Bitzer Park Expansion Project at a total cost not to exceed $450,000 and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thank you. Chairman Foltz.
Thank you. As we discussed in committee last week, this is a great project for Bitzer Park. Pat, I don't know if you've had a chance to send copies to everybody or so we could view this. It's a brick.
I did send to everyone what you have.
Good. It's a brick structure, columns, pillars with a nice wooden. It's like an endwood structure where it's natural wood that you see. It's very beautiful with concrete, and then additional pathways. Obviously, if you guys have reviewed those, I think it's been talked about for many years. I don't have a problem waiting to have a second reading. Just look at the trees a little closer and see if there is any wiggle room to save a few more. I am somewhat of a tree hugger myself. I don't think we obviously don't want to cut down trees. We don't have to, but that said, I understand once you do construct something and put in new sidewalks and just put in footers and dig up ground, you're going to affect root structures that are already there. So you don't want to weaken a tree just to try to save it, that unfortunately might fall down later. I do appreciate the comments by Mr. Blueball and some of the other public speakers about this. So Pat, if you had anything else to add, obviously, does it have to be on emergency pack? Can we wait 2 weeks?
No, we can't wait.
That a little closer.
No, here's why. What we're doing is we're advertising and receiving bids. All these issues can be addressed all along the way, but we need to get it out and advertise it so that we can get bids back in and we can enter into a construction time in order to get this done this year. So I don't see value when nothing is committed other than giving a contractor an opportunity to tell us how much something costs. We may find out that this project, once bid out, maybe it's 600,000. We may not do the project. We've had these things happen before. So I think it bears some significant weight that we get out there as soon as possible to see what is the construction market looking like given this COVID environment. We're finding with some of our other projects that contractors becoming very stretched and time is not available. Time is available if you want to pay double the premium. So it's important that we get this out there to bid. Now, is regarding, the trees, some of the, comments from earlier, the pine trees behind, it would be to the rear of this park. For many years, people thought they were part of the IRG property or part of the Y property. We had them surveyed. 22 of the 24 trees are on city property. They're pine trees that, for all intents and purposes, the bottom two dead. I don't know what more to say with putting a structure there that these trees fall on at some point. These are perfect candidates to be uprooted because they're so old and they're in a weakened condition already. And regarding the other trees that are around the periphery and around the walkways, I mean, if we actually spent time at Bitzer Park, and you would see that the tree roots have uprooted significant amounts of the brick, creating trip hazards. And we all know that the only way to properly set the bricks was not the way that it was done decades ago, but there was no cement base put down to allow the bricks to rest like we did over in front of City Hall, so that we would never have these things happen. But I mean, this is the perfect time to address all these things. Appreciate the comments. The people that are likely to utilize the park. Yes, they were consulted. The school system, the high school, the grade schools, the orchestras, the library. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a park that's not being utilized right now. And this is an opportunity to increase its utilization and make it a signature location for downtown and be a hub of something someday that will be there. If we are able to get things going over at 101 East Maple with some residential development and the like. So the opportunity to do this while we have funds from the state of Ohio, should not be lost upon us at this time. We certainly want the park to have ample foliage and whatnot, and we will be working with Rice's Nursery on that to properly do it. I don't agree with the assessment as it relates to City Hall. Can't tell you the number of comments we received positively over the years since we've done that project, and how beautiful that makes the Huntington and the City Hall in that corner look. So, and it will only get better as time goes on, as those trees start to grow. But someday, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, when I'm 100, and assuming that I'm not the director of administration at that time, those trees will be too old and too big. And they will repeat the cycle, but for another generation or two to have to deal with. So that's where we're at today. We wouldn't allow those trees today to be planted so close to the street. And over the years, we've had to do multiple, trimmings to those trees because the branches were interfering with, tractor trailer traffic in those intersections. It's just, this is the appropriate time to kind of deal with it. Number of those trees, they have dead branches at the top. I mean, it's indicating to me that we should be proactive at this time and create a true design for the park that will enhance it.
Pat, I concur with most of your comments. That's not, you're right. That's why I said earlier, because mature trees at the end of their life cycle or middle life cycle can be in the way for progress. And we have to think the next 50 years to replant the next, I'll call it an urban forest or urban park area. So there are beautiful trees in the future, because every tree has a lifespan. I get all that. I'm guessing if you want to move forward with this, I'm just asking down the road, once we get a contractor, if there is any way to maybe look at one or two more trees, we can look at it then. I don't want to hold it up.
We absolutely can look at it.
I'm not trying to say let's save 20 trees. I'm just saying maybe get Rice's down there, or Lola Lewis looks at it, who I know personally also, just to kind of respect some of the comments from the public to see if there's something else we could do to maybe save a few more of the trees. Other than that, I'm on board. I think we should move forward with this, and those are my sentiments. So we're 99% agreement here. I'm just looking for a little wiggle room on the trees. That's all.
Dominic Fonte agrees with Doug Foltz.
Good to go.
Okay. Any other
All right, so with
comments?
that, I'll make a motion to approve the first reading.
Sort of second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings?
So moved by Foltz.
Second by
Second,
Revolt.
Stroya.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules.
So moved by Foltz.
Second,
Second
Stroya.
Revolt.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Moving on. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, ordinance 32-20.
So moved, Soretta.
Second, Foltz.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton to enter into an agreement with the Stark County Commissioners for the reimbursement costs related to the rehabilitation of Stark County's East Maple Vehicular Bridge as part of the city's East Maple Street Enhancement Project and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thank you. Chairman Font.
Yeah, just like what Tim said, it's on an emergency, and it's not the walking bridge. It's the part where the cars drive over. So there's going to be a pretty substantial cost there, and we want to make sure we have an agreement that we get reimbursed for that full amount. That's it in a nutshell. It's on an emergency. So I'd move that we pass first reading. Thank you.
Second by Foltz.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings?
So
Foltz.
moved.
So moved.
Revolt
Second,
seconds.
Stroya.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules.
Revolt
Foltz
moves.
moves.
Soretta second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, ordinance 33-20?
So moved, Warren.
Second, Soretta.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton to enter into an agreement with the Stark County Commissioners for the use of the Community Development Block Grant Funds on the Pittsburgh-Milton Carousel Waterline Replacement Project and declaring the same to be an emergency.
All right. Thank you. Chairman Serrata.
Yes, talked about this last week. This has been budgeted, and we also got this block grant. That's one of the reasons why it's on emergency, to get some bids going with that. But this is a water line replacement, basically, that's been planned. So I move that we go ahead and with the first reading and, of course, emergency with this.
Okay.
Second, Foltz.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. May I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, a motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules.
Revolt moves.
Soretta, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, ordinance 34-20?
Revolt moves.
Soretta, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
An ordinance amending Part 11, Planning and Zoning of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton, specifically Chapter 1181, amendments as described below.
Thank you. Chairman Revolt.
As we discussed last week, we are trying to make some amendments to the process in the way we handle zoning issues. And in this particular ordinance, we've got a couple of them, which are the foundation for the ordinance. The first is that we are going to make the clerk of council the manager of zoning legislation as it moves through the process. Second is we want to make sure that under initiation of zoning amendments, that the mayor is included in that process. So we've added in 118102, for example, that the mayor can submit requests for zoning changes. And these are to the subdivision regs and the zoning regulations. The mayor has the authority to request a change or an amendment. I think the most, in addition to placing the clerk as sort of the quarterback, the other thing that we really want to do, and it's required down here in 118103, is that we want the individuals seeking an amendment to the subdivision regulations or the zoning regulations. We want them to meet with the chief building officer first. And that way, any issues or problems can be identified and addressed before we're into the legislative process. Why is that important? A, it avoids misunderstanding. B is it's less costly to the applicant. So he doesn't have to go out and have an attorney, hire surveyors, go through all the costly regulatory steps. Gets that done first. So, any questions?
Nope.
Well then, can I have a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance 34-2020?
So moved.
Mr. Ryan.
Is there a second?
Second's ready then.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, may I have a motion and a second to read by title only, resolution number 3-20?
So moved.
Second's ready.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Tim?
Resolution authorizing the pickup of employee contributions for the voluntary purchase of military service credit for the city of North Canton eligible full-time employees of the city's police and fire EMS departments who are members of the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund payroll reduction pickup plan.
All right. Thank you, Tim. And Director of Finance, Alabak, went over this last week. Anybody have any questions for her regarding this? Gina, do you have anything to add?
No, this is standard language required by Police and Fire Pension Fund for the employee to purchase the military time that he has. It would be his own payroll deduct. It just authorizes us to deduct his payroll to pay for that.
Okay, very good. All right, if there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adopt the first reading.
So moved, Foltz.
Second's ready.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, reports. Deputy Director of Administration.
Thank you. This has been a great meeting and I don't want to make it longer. So I really just have a couple operational notes. You know, as we open everything back up and everybody's getting back to life pre-COVID, I just want to, give kudos to our administrative staff, specifically Kelly Hart and Tracy Cole have really been holding it down. We have received an enormous amount of phone calls into administration recently with, weather issues, when it rains and the flooding, the phones just get overloaded with calls as people are, out in the nice weather starting to build and do things. Calls come into us that may need to get redirected to the building department. And probably the number one question has been around the pool. When's the pool opening and the progress with that. So they've done a great job. They, as always, keep the wheels on the bus so that the bus can keep moving forward in the city. And I also want to just also note the other members of not our team, but our extension of our team, our management staff over at the Y, Ben Wheeler and his team and everything they've been doing, really working hard to get, our community pool open, Dogwood. So they've been working real hard on that. And they do have on the YMCA site under the Dogwood pool, they have all the information. If anybody's asking any questions about when it's opening, anything about memberships, it's all out there now. Pool opening date is set for July 1st. And then the other, what's that?
Yay.
Yay, yes. And the other addition to our management extension team is over at Arrowhead, and the general manager there, Adam Thompson, and his team. They worked really hard to also get the Arrowhead pool open this weekend and had a great stellar weekend, great weather. And they've sold an enormous amount of memberships, and they're doing really well out there, and the golf course looks great. So kudos to that team. And then just one note I put out there, so just letting everyone know, we had a repaving of Price Park West parking lot, as well as the Glenwood lot that was scheduled last week, but due to the rain, had to be rescheduled. So that's happening this week, June 10th. So just everybody plan to park on the east parking lot. That would be the first parking lot off of West Maple, closest to the pond, just so we can get that done. And a lot of other operational things that are happening, but I'm not going to go into details, just other than to say that, you know, a lot of good things are happening, and we're just moving it all forward.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. Director of Administration.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to inquire of the council if on June 22nd, I'm sorry, on June 15th, next week, if in addition to the committee of the whole, council would entertain a special regular meeting to consider ordinance number 30-2020. It was given its first reading tonight. That's on the appropriate. I know it's not on an emergency, not seeking an emergency, but if we could have the second reading on June 15th and then the third reading on June 22nd, that would work really well for the administering of these funds.
For ordinance 30-20?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll handle that when we speak about the meeting calendar. Is that okay?
Thank you. That's my report.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Director of Law.
Thank you. I am going a little bit out of order, and the rationale behind that is I had uncovered some information that I was researching that's going to impact a bit for the mayor's comments, and I didn't give him much of an opportunity. In fact, it was just moments before the meeting began that I had found this and put this together. So I asked if I could go first just to kind of give a little bit of a lean in. But late last week, I was asked to look at what we have here in the city is the door-to-door sales registration program that runs through the permits office. And as you well would imagine, you'd think that that program on a statewide basis, given the governor's executive order regarding COVID-19 practices, that door-to-door sales across the board under the somewhere under the order would be suspended. But in fact, it's not. And that caused me to research a bit further. And I found that perhaps the largest agency that would offer licenses for door-to-door solicitation, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. Indeed, it has acted on this, but for itself. It licensed door-to-door sales for those businesses that when we talk about electric or gas aggregation, for anyone that purchases gas or electric, they offer licensing for those programs. And so I believe you can imagine there's a great deal of those are involved and affects a great deal of people. And so when I guess this came to light that the door-to-door sales order was not included under the governor's executive order, that the Ohio Consumers Council, and what that is a state agency that represents Ohio consumers of it's under the Commission for Gas and Electric and the Public Utilities for the state of Ohio. It urged the Public Utilities Commission to suspend during the governor's executive order regarding COVID-19 all licensing involving door-to-door sales. And indeed, that's what the Public Utilities Commission did that on March 17th. And essentially it said that these practices are in conflict with the governor's executive order. Coincidentally, it also came just a day after a similar suspension in the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission and the Illinois Commerce Commission. So they're essentially the similar entities in other states. Now, for our own city, we currently don't have any active licenses for door-to-door sales. And so what I looked at was our solicitation ordinance. It's in section 723. And I was looking for the ability to suspend that and believing that it was either going to be our chief building officer or council to have the ability to suspend this. And indeed, it does have a provision in there, 72307, revocation of the certificate. And the chief building officer can do so, but only after the applicant has essentially done something wrong, that they misled or deceptive information in their application or something along those lines. So I stretched out a bit in the section for business licensing and saw that in 701.06 that the mayor has the authority to revoke any license at any time for conditions or consideration which, had they existed at the time of the issuance, would have been valid grounds for its denial. And then further in section B, as a preliminary to the revocation, the mayor may issue an order to suspend the license. And this gives the authority for the applicant to appeal that suspension. It actually is an appeal to city council, but it does give them due process. And in speaking with the mayor just before the meeting, as I said, he only had a couple minutes on this, but I believe we were on the same page that having not known that this was available and wasn't in place, that perhaps we move on this somewhat quickly and adopt an order that will suspend for the period of time of this COVID-19 governor's order the ability for someone or business to obtain a door-to-door solicitation license within the city of North Canton. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Tim. All right, next up, Mayor, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, thanks for researching that, Mr. Fox. Just in short, we just want to make sure that such marketing doesn't contribute to the spread of coronavirus, particularly at our at-risk populations in the city. So that is something we'll look at tomorrow in working up an order that will address that type of solicitation to protect our community. Just a couple of things here for Mr. Davis. Again, I appreciate your patience with us trying to find a yard waste disposal for green waste, but I did reach out to Lake Township, and Lake Township recycle facility is open, and that facility is overseen by Stark Tuscarora's Wayne Joint Solid Waste Management District, and is open to residents who live within Stark, Tuscarora, or Wayne counties only. And so they do accept grass clippings, leaves, branches, stumps, shrubs, pine needles, and small ornamental trees. As we talked before, we have very limited space here in North Canton for us to accommodate any type of recycling like this. And I've still reached out to Plain Township to see if there's some type of working partnership in the near future that we might be able to work together or collaborate on. So thank you with patience on that. Recently, we had our city provided a safe atmosphere and location for a Black Lives Matter peaceable assembling. And that was last Thursday on June 4th near Bitzer Park. And I do appreciate the leadership there, reaching out, communicating with our city administration and chief of police so that we were able to provide a peaceful assembly for them. Also on Sunday, just to bring council up to date, a peaceful march of Black Lives Matters occurred on Sunday, June 7th of 2020. A group of people marched from a church in Canton. Our police department provided traffic control at all the intersections. And we also had a station where our police department passed out water for some of those in their journey. The big thing was to provide a safe experience for this group to present and express their views in a civil form of communication. If I may, just want to remind council that the North Canton Police Department is committed to providing law enforcement services to the community with due regard for the racial, cultural, or other differences of those served. It is the policy of the department to provide law enforcement services and to enforce the law equally, fairly, objectively, and without discrimination toward any individual group. I know there's a lot being said and talked about in our communities and country and in the world, but I believe strongly that our community is one that promotes the rights of our residents and visitors without discrimination towards any individual or group. I just wanted to share that comment with you that I feel very strongly about. And again, I understand the dialogue that was from our visitors today, and I do appreciate their comments, and we'll take many of those under review. And that's all I have tonight, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mayor. All good stuff. All right, next up, Director of Finance.
Thank you. We've been keeping an eye on Senate Bill 310. It's been amended and it has passed through the House and the Senate. We're waiting on the governor's approval now, which once that's done, it will become effective. But it's the fourth component of the CARES Act, which is the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Of that, $4.5 billion is coming to the state of Ohio. $11.5 million of that is coming to Stark County, and $352,000 will be allocated to the city of North Canton. Those are all estimates until it's a final. Of course, we won't have the final numbers. The timeline is quite quick on that. So as soon as we have all of the guidance and the provisions released by the state auditor's office, we'll create a fund. We'll track that money. Federal funds, of course, are not to be supplementing our budget, but they're to supplant. But we have lots of expenditures that we were unanticipated that we'll be able to apply this towards. And it's only for the time period for this fiscal year. So once we have all that information, we're going to ask to move that forward pretty quickly.
Gina, when do you think you're going to have that information? Because I was going to, in the meetings calendar section of the agenda, set a committee and a council meeting for this Wednesday to get that handled.
I would hope that we would have that, and I think our steps are very clear. It's and actually the amount has been revised, and both revisions have been pretty close to each other, $352,200. So I think that by Wednesday we will have all the necessary information to establish the fund and approve the appropriation. That would then also allow us to register on the grants website. That also has to be done. There's all these steps for federal funds. So Wednesday, I think that we would be in good shape to go ahead with that next step. That would be great.
Okay, so the committee would be, will we be talking about a resolution to accept and then an ordinance to set up a line item?
To establish the fund and the appropriation, correct?
The fund and the appropriation, okay.
Okay,
Okay, very good.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Gina, I appreciate it. All right, next up, Engineer Graham.
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, we had our bid opening this past Friday, June 5th, for the East Maple Street Enhancement Project. That went very, very well. Quite pleased how that turned out. Our engineer's estimate for that project was $1,966,000. And our low bid of the three bids, our low bid was submitted by Central Allied Enterprises. And the amount of their bid was $1,839,705.95. So quite a bit under that estimate. So we're excited to actually Board of Control conditionally awarded it this morning, and we're looking to get started hopefully in a month to 6 weeks once we get through all the federal paperwork to get them authorized. Next up, all our projects are really moving forward quite nicely. You may have noticed today, maybe you were caught in the traffic, our paving contractor came back for our Apple Grove project, and they're putting on that thin polymer final layer of asphalt today and tomorrow and should button it up Wednesday morning. And that was one where we also needed the temperature to cooperate. And after a 3-week wait, we're finally there. And also on the paving front, we have our pre-construction meeting tomorrow morning with the same contractor, Superior Paving, and also ODOT will be there for the Portage repaving project. So I'll be able to report, pretty quickly on their start date for that. But I think they want to get going pretty quick. And that concludes my report, sir.
All right, thank you, Rob.
Yep.
Next up, Council Clerk, Ben.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two quick items. First off, in regards to the CIRS presentation we saw earlier tonight, all members of the public who are interested in having that PowerPoint, midnight tonight, a web page will go live on the North Canton website under Economic Development that will have more information about the CRA as well as the presentations from tonight. We have also been doing second thing, we've also been doing work in response to citizen comments about the difficulty in finding live streams.
Right. Thank you, Ben.
We've been doing work
All right,
on
Council,
webpage to make
Member Foltz.
our virtual
No report.
open meetings possible.
Right,
And I would
Member Warren.
encourage any interested
The only thing I'll say is just thanks for all the conversation and explanation tonight. Really good reports from everybody, from the mayor to the director of operations, to engineering, finance, just really helpful tonight. Darrell, your overview was great and just appreciate the conversations. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Member Fonte.
I appreciate all the comments. I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank the donators for the flag fund, and it was Rotary, 2,500, Lions Club, 2,500, Bob Hoff, 1,000, Bill Lemon, 1,000, Cutler Real Estate, 2,500. And as you drive down North and South Main, you can see the beautiful flags. So thanks again for the generous donation. The second thing is that, we had a big flash flood the other day, and the Zimmer Ditch, it was the deepest and the highest I've seen it in years. So I know there's some areas that are out of the city that tree stumps are blocking drainage areas. And I would just say that if the city folks, as they drive around and they see like Glenwood and different streets that have clogged up drain grates, we want to make sure we try to keep that clean, because that all goes down in the drain and clogs everything up. So I'm hoping that we can stay on top of that, or at least direct the correct people to stay on top of it, so that we don't have the backing up that happened. A lot of water, if you guys checked it out, it came all the way up to the houses almost this time. First time in several years. And thanks for the comments, everybody. It was very informative. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dom. Member Revolt.
Well, thank you. To Dom's observation, I believe that the situation where we had a plugged storm outlet on the Zimber, I think if it hasn't already been rectified, will be pretty soon. So I think that matters.
This is Diorio. Let's make sure that we understand that we shouldn't be speaking on behalf of other governmental agencies, and make it clear that this was not something that occurred within the city limits of North Canton, and that occurred in Plain Township. Plain Township was notified. It was determined that the Stark County Sanitary Engineer's Office was needed to be contacted regarding this. Our city engineer has done that and given them the notice and forwarded those Plain Township residents' complaints to the appropriate agencies for help.
Well, I would respectfully say that when that Plain Township drain backs up, is clogged, it impacts our residents, as Dom indicated. And although this was an extraordinary rainfall, we do have an interest in protecting our residents from downstream flooding. Having said that, I want to thank Ben for putting our presentation live tonight. It's going on at midnight because he assures me it's nothing more than voodoo economics. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Darrell. Member Soretta.
Yeah, a couple things here. First of all, I'm going to state Rob. I'm going to go after Rob in East Maple, and he knows what I'm going to say. I'm surprised he didn't put it in his report here. We came under budget. What? Can we add that to my bridge out there, the Game of Thrones bridge? So just going to throw that out there a little bit there.
Hey, how about Glenwood? Glenwood needs it, buddy.
Okay, so moving on from that, I was approached this week by community members who were stating that our community has so many nice improvements to their homes that you notice. People are out, and maybe it's the COVID thing. There are a lot of people at home. Springtime, there's so many homes that look so nice, and a lot of times we put a lot of time into talking about some of these homes that have issues and so on. And I just wanted to remind everybody, because I did talk to Mayor Steve and Pat today, that we do have a program online that if you want to make or just kind of recognize something that looks nice, maybe somebody added something and it really looks nice, we do have online certificates of beautification that the mayor will give out. People just got to get online. It's on our website and recognize folks, because we do have a wonderful city, and we continue to try to make it better with the areas that may not be as up to par that we'd like, but we do have so many, and this is a beautiful time of the year that people are out there and working, and we have a lot of pride in that. So just want to remind that to keep up the wonderful pride. So my next comments are directed towards Councilman Darrell Revolt. As a fellow alumni of Hoover High School, as many of you are, I want to recognize him and congratulate Darrell for being elected into the Hoover's Hall of Distinction for the community accomplishments that he has had over the years. And I don't think anybody would argue that. So Darrell, congratulations. We know how much you put your heart and soul and a lot of care into this city. So I want to recognize you at this meeting for that, for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
You bet. You bet. And that's my report for this evening.
Wow. Good stuff. Thank you, Mark. Member Stroya.
Hey, everybody. Just want to say thanks to Brad, Chuck, and Joseph. Thank you for the mayor for your comments regarding the protests. Congratulations, Darrell. I don't know how that slipped by us, but that's fantastic news. Hope everybody's staying safe.
It was a COVID emergency.
That's good.
Fever.
COVID operation.
That's good. I think that's it. Just want to say support your local businesses. They need us now more than ever. So, try to make sure your effort is going toward something local. And that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And I guess I'll finish up here, just kind of piggybacking off the mayor's comments. I wanted to thank Police Chief Kemp and his staff for the great work he did for the 2 walks that came through town. They did an excellent job, and it went without a hitch. So, okay, final call for new business to council. Seeing none, we'll get into the meetings calendar. We have a committee of the whole scheduled next Monday, June 15th, June 22nd, regular council meeting, and June 29th, committee of the whole. These are all virtual via Zoom. I need a motion and a second to add a special council meeting to June 15th following the committee of the whole for ordinance 30-20.
So moved, Troya.
Second, Foltz.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. And finally, I need a motion and a second to set a special committee of the whole and followed by a council meeting for this Wednesday, June 10th. And I'll open it up to council. Can we do 5 p.m.? Would that be okay for everybody?
June 10th.
That's this Wednesday.
At what time?
5 p.m.
Yeah, I can do it.
That works. Ben, you'll send a reminder?
Yeah, Ben
Okay.
has to send out a notice, so he'll copy all of us on the notice, obviously, the public notice. So we're all good.
That's good.
All right, so motion and a second for a committee and council meeting this Wednesday, June 10th, 5 p.m.
Okay.
Oh, and the topic is to address the COVID funds that we're going to be receiving from the state.
There you go.
Do I have a motion and a second?
You've got a motion?
Second, Soretta.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Ben, do you have that? You're all set? All right, thank you. Well, that concludes our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Soretta.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.